right, everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about the Poseidon adventure. We're talking about Husky kids, cop shows, and one-eyed celebrities. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode number 3 of Nice Pull. You know, Chris, last episode we were talking about movies that had a huge impact on us back in the 70s or 80s. And I know we were talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But one of the biggest ones that had an impact on me, at least in my nightmares, was a little film called The Poseidon Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just about a cruise ship, right? Like a Carnival cruise ship. And it runs into a rogue wave in the middle of the ocean, which I guess is a real thing. On New Year's Eve,
yeah.
100-foot tidal wave, and it capsizes it. And it's the harrowing story of the passengers who used to be on top of the ship. Now they're on the bottom of the ship, and they're trying to make it to the bottom of the ship, which is now the top of the ship. And I tell you, man, that whole thing, the idea of rogue waves just scared the crap out of me as a kid. And then I was just convinced anytime I was at the ocean, near the ocean, or in the ocean, that I was going to somehow run into a tidal wave.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was until the other movie came along that destroyed everyone's desire to go near the water, right? The ocean.
That would be Jaws.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We could spend about a week's worth of podcasts on the effect that Jaws had on kids our age back then.
Absolutely. You know, you didn't want to go in the water. They could get you in ankle deep in water.
Right.
You know, even though the odds, I think you were more likely actually to be stung to death by bees, getting back to bees, than you were to get bitten by a shark. But it was just the fear and the anxiety based on there's a shark out there. And you do hear about it. You know, it's funny. It's like now you will still hear some guy, but you'll see him on the Today Show. This guy fought off a shark when he was surfing in Australia or something like that. That kind of crap happens. But as far as an entire community being terrorized by one shark,
right? You
know, and the shark's not real. And I think the thing is we villainize the sharks, but all the shark really is doing is eating people. Like the shark's not, maybe he's hungry or he's trying to establish a territory.
Is that all he's doing, Chris, is eating people? I mean, I'm glad that you're downplaying
Okay,
that.
but if you're afraid of the shark, then just don't go in the water and you're fine.
Okay.
Right? But it's always these things, it's like hunters, like people that go and shoot these animals, and go and shoot deer and shoot, elk or whatever. It's just like you're going into their house and where they live and you're shooting them. How about if they, come into your house and start, shooting you or impaling you on their antlers? Again, I don't want to get into a discourse about hunting.
Too late because you already did.
Okay.
You got super preachy right there. But
what did the shark really do? It just ate people.
Well, exactly. And I think the solution to not getting bitten by a shark
don't go in the water.
Pretty simple. But guys, because back then we didn't have anyone else telling us different, right? Now we all know that sharks aren't generally aggressive. And for the most part, they don't care about humans and they do leave you alone. And they're really not anything to worry about except rarely. But we didn't know that back then. And nobody was telling us different. Everybody just bought into Steven Spielberg's version of sharks. And by the way, Chris and I believed truly as kids that every shark in the ocean was at least 23 feet long.
Right, and it was a great white. It wasn't a Menace shark, a sand
100%.
shark,
Yep.
The leopard shark, those ones that are just basically, just kind of like squirrels, basically, in the water that aren't really going to hurt you.
Are you? I never thought about that. For those of you that aren't natives to the California coastline, we have these things called leopard sharks, which are technically sharks, but they just kind of skim the bottom, and I don't think they're capable of doing any actual damage to a human being. But I've never heard them referred to as the squirrels of the ocean. I don't think that's the official nomenclature used by marine biologists. But Chris, I know this has nothing to do with Nice Pull, but I did want to very quickly let you talk about the crazy thing that happened when you were walking your dog the other day. Speaking of animals.
Well, it wasn't anything that happened to the dog because the dog is really more of an instigator. To reference the dog's a great dog. The family loves her. She's part of the family. She's a 40-pound mutt, a rescue from Tijuana, actually. And the things that she has, and she's like a typical dog. She barks at birds. She has a thing with crows, right? And we see crows on a daily basis. This morning, as we're going out, I walk 20 feet down the sidewalk, and there's a crow that she kind of lunges, and it's okay. She doesn't, I pull her back. She doesn't, the crow just kind of squawks and jumps away. But the problem I have with this is this happens on a regular basis. And from what I understand, crows recognize human faces, right? Crows, and they're like the only species, or maybe there are other species, but they're only species of bird that like will recognize a human. If you're nice to them and feed them, hey. If you're mean to them, hey, they remember this stuff. So now I'm thinking it's like, I don't think they recognize dogs. Yeah. But like this crow and the other crow. So what if these crows, it turns into like the Omen or something like that, where I get crows flying out of the sky and they're attacking. Yeah. They got me because they're tired of me. They think I'm the one sending the dog after them when it's all her.
There he is. Right. That's the guy that owns that thing that keeps fucking with us.
Right. So we got to take care of him. Yeah. He's the problem, right? And every time I'm walking my dog, there's always something. I kind of think like, and sometimes, because again, I'll go out really early in the morning, certain times of the year when it's dark, and I'm thinking like, is where, and I live in a safe neighborhood, but it's still dark and there's still kind of strange things. Things look strange in the dark. I always think, this is where it turns into like an episode of Law and Order where like I find like a dead guy or something like that. And then like you cut to the next scene where the detectives are saying, yeah, that guy over there came across the body when he was walking his dog. And then I have to go and tell the detectives, yeah, I just came here and turned around the corner and there was this foot sticking out of a bush or something like that. So there's always these weird, not necessarily weird, but these little things that kind of happen. They kind of pop into my mind when I'm out walking my dog.
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but walking the dog, is that a euphemism? I'm not
It is not a euphemism. Oh, okay. It's actually walking the dog.
Oh, okay.
I mean, when I walk that other kind of dog, it's certainly not out in the street, and it's certainly not with crows around, and it's certainly not really early in the morning.
Because in the 70s, you could. It really wasn't. No, not really. No, even in the 70s, that was not. That was frowned on. Yeah. Okay.
Generally speaking, from what I understand.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Chris, look, I got to tell you that you sound like you're thinking that it would be really funny if your paranoia about finding a body or something weird happening on the walk really came to fruition. But I want to tell you right now, you're glossing over the real frightening part, which is crows really are that smart. That is the thing that you need to worry about. I've seen a bunch of stuff where crows can literally go through 16 or 17 steps in order to obtain food once they've been trained. They're one of the only, I think, birds, maybe even animals, on the short list of animals that will do things just for the fun of it, right? Like sliding down roofs and stuff like that. And yeah, man, they totally talk to each other and they are vengeful. And I think Alfred Hitchcock, if anything, understated the power of the crow.
I often wonder, what are these? You hear them squawk, and a lot of times there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Are they? I'm like,
what's that
called? Is it paranoia?
And Chris, what is that called when there's a lot of them?
A murder.
There you go.
Why? See, that's pretty creepy question. In itself. A murder? That's right. Not a flock. It's not a herd.
That's right.
It's a murder. I think, somebody knows something when they called it a murder. Yeah. And what are they talking about? You say I'm paranoid? Maybe they aren't talking about it. They're plotting. It's like, look, this guy goes out every day at the same time. That's right, yeah. So maybe they case my whole neighborhood and they know when they're going to exact their revenge on me.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not saying you're paranoid. That's the whole point. I'm on board with you. In fact, I think you're under paranoid. That's not even a word, but I think you're not even worried enough is what I'm saying.
I had this other crow. And again, since we're talking crow, I saved basically this crow had a lizard, right? And it kind of torn the lizards. And we know, right? The lizard tail kind of rips right off. And it was in the street and it had the lizard's tail, but then the tail wasn't up. It wanted the full lizard. The lizard was kind of stunned. And the dog was not around. It was just me. Again, I know I'm making a lot of crow friends here, but I kind of came over and stomped my feet to save the lizard. So the lizard could like go into the bushes. I'm kind of getting in the crow's way. And then the lizard starts to hiss at me. And I'm like, look, you lizard bastard, I'm saving your life.
Yeah.
I'm like making, I'm kind of obscuring the crow's vision to you. I'm getting in the way. This is your chance to get in the bush. If you want me to leave and you want the crow to just eat you, hey, just let me know. Stop hissing at me.
This is the problem I have with your story. In my entire life, I have never heard a lizard hiss. I call bullshit on that.
Okay. Well, wasn't necessarily, it opened. Okay, maybe I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
But you know how they open their mouth?
Thank you.
It wasn't speaking to me, but it was purely agitated.
Okay, good.
Purely agitated,
Okay,
you know.
good.
And it's like, okay,
That's better.
okay, lizard, whatever. Maybe I heard the hissing. Maybe it was a crow hissing. Maybe the crow's pissed off because I was interrupting his lunch.
One thing I will say is that I know how smart crows are, and it's one of the reasons that I now make my own little personal stand when it comes to eating octopus, right? I you know, I'm one of those guys that's like, I can't eat it. It's as smart as me, if not smarter. They're very smart. That is my one, you know, eco-friendly, love the planet thing that I definitely do each time. But I'll tell you, with crows, man, you got to be careful with those things. I want to go outside because we have 3 or 4 crows in front of my house every morning and feed them and be like the buddy of the crow. But I saw what happened to my neighbor across the street. And I hope you're sitting down, Chris. This is very scary. For some reason, they ended up loving the tree behind his house. And there must have been, as God is my witness, 1,000 crows gathered in that tree for about 4 days straight. And the noise that those things made, it was deafening. You couldn't believe it. Every single time I would come outside, like the old man that I am, you know, who is playing that music that loud? What is going on? And my neighbor literally came to my house, you know, and he looked scared. He was pale. He was nervous. He's like, what the fuck am I going to do? What's going on? I can't live like this. What's happening? And all it took, because we went on the interwebs, is playing music really, really loud and pissing them off. And everybody here listening thinks I'm kidding. He went into his backyard, got speakers, and played music super, super loud. And all it took was 20 minutes and they all left. They're actually said, hey, dude, we're trying to talk to each other. What the fuck? Right? They actually got annoyed by the noise and left.
So you didn't play Counting Crows or the Black Crows?
So
Sheryl Crow?
Anytime we do dad jokes, that is negative points.
Was that a mass? Was that a mass murder then? Because again, you said it was like 1,000 crows. Wow. How many crows make a murder? If it's a big murder, I don't know. That sounds like don't they do that when they're torturing prisoners in like CIA black ops places? Yeah, they play really loud music.
Yeah, and that's a poll. That's a poll from the last episode.
Right. And it worked though. Yeah. Right? It worked.
Yeah.
What was the music that they played?
It was just. It wasn't even actual music like a song from a band. Mm-hmm. It was just so
it was country music.
Right, that's right. It wasn't actual music.
Got it.
That's right. Country or Western. No, it was right off the internet, and it was some kind of like a Buddhist monk meditation series of sounds with chimes and stuff. But man, they did not like that. But hey, back to movies. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the Poseidon adventure. Oh man, my God, did that just destroy me as a kid. I don't know why. It just deep into my little head there. It was somehow, even being inland, that I was somehow going to get killed by a tidal wave.
Didn't want to go on that boat. Didn't even want to go on like the boat ride at like Disneyland or anything like that. I think what kind of maybe more terrifying for me on like the Poseidon adventure or a lot of those movies, Towering Inferno or the TV shows, it's like at that age, we were exposed to a lot of different things. One of them was we were exposed to like a lot of Ernest Borgnine in the sense of like, and I don't know, it's just like, and if you went back historically, film students, Ernest Borgnine had been around probably since the 50s, which at the time was only like 20 years. But in the sense of like all these people that were in these movies, there would maybe be a kid. I think there was a kid in the Poseidon adventure that was like the little brother that was like basically was eventually used as a plot device at one point because he was small and he could climb through a porthole or something like that. But there was really nobody that was relatable in that regard. It's like everybody was old. Or they at least appeared to be old. And like we were supposed to aspire to be these people, or we were like, they were role models or whatever. But it's like, man, there was a lot of old characters.
That's right.
That like we were, sort of absorbed into sitcoms, movies in this sense. And I guess maybe the thing is they looked old, but they weren't, because again, it's all relative. We thought they're old because, again, anybody, somebody in their 20s was, quote unquote, old to us at that time.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it occurred to me as I'm looking back on it again, I think we're speaking more of the 70s. By the time you got into the 80s, younger people are being routinely cast in things. But for the most part, in the 70s, everybody in every film was just an old person. I think back to even like a Disney movie. I think I took my friends on my birthday to go see a movie, and it was The Strongest Man in the World with Kurt Russell, and that's what you did, right? Because it's rated G, and we all saw the movie, and almost all of the actors, aside from Kurt Russell and his like two friends, are just really old people, and that was all the TV shows were mostly centered on old people doing old people things. And I guess they were just hangovers from, the 50s or even the 40s. These were all character actors. And so we didn't have any fresh blood. I think most of Hollywood was just old people casting old people so that they could entertain other old people, right? Even the super hip things like a cop show, right? It was hardly ever a young guy. It was always old dudes, right? Like Barney Miller. Right. Is that not a big collection of old people?
They were old.
Everybody
for us was, yeah. There was no youth character. There was nobody we could identify with. The old people, and I think also the older people in this regard, in a sense, is like, that was part of who they were. Like if they were a pain in the ass, or if they were mean, or if they were like some sort of adversary, it's because they were old, right? It was like on Dennis the Menace, it's like Mr. Wilson
That's right.
was Mr. Wilson. And the fact that it was like, Mr. Wilson got all ticked off at Dennis because he was old. Not that Dennis was like a pain in the ass and was like blowing crap up and getting in the way of something. Anybody would have thought Dennis was a menace. But no, Mr. Wilson, he just doesn't get it. He's old, and he was probably like 44 at the time.
And by the way, looking back on Dennis's antics, yeah, like you said, they were very mild. It's really just a show for old people to go, yeah, that kid's a goddamn menace. Right? Because they're just cranky, right? It just, and every show, even if you introduced a young person in the show, it was always from the old person's perspective, trying to deal with that young person. I'm thinking back on other cop shows, right? Like the Streets of San Francisco, right? That's two cop detectives.
Right.
One of them, a very young Michael Douglas.
A Quinn Martin production.
And you find, dude, nice pull. And you finally get a younger guy as the star of a show, but nope, he's saddled with who? The guy from the American Express commercials. Karl Maldin.
Right.
Super old.
Who knows everything.
Super old guy.
The young guy is like impetuous and doesn't know enough. So yeah, he's a supporting character. He's not the guy that really comes through at the end. It's the old guy.
Always the old guy.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was at that point, it was just like, no, he knows he's old. He's been around. He may even pull the chicks too. Same time, it's just like maybe they have like some hot guest star, and it ends up with Karl Maldin as opposed to with like, Michael Douglas, who's still around, obviously. And now he's the old guy. Right.
Yeah.
But no, they were all older. And that was just, nobody's going to sell that show. Now, I think if they would, it was just like, hey, we're going to sell a show about an older person.
Right.
And that's the whole hook is that they're 80 and maybe they can kick everybody's ass.
But even going back to like, musicals, my dad used to love this musical, The Music Man, starring Robert Preston. And later on, I did come around, and I do think that's actually a pretty awesome musical. But old people are always being cast from the very beginning, right? So Robert Preston, I think, was like 45 or 46 years old. Check me on that. And who's the girl that he's going after?
Is it Shirley Jones?
Shirley Jones, but she's in her 20s.
Right.
This is literally a dude that's 20 years older than her, and it's absolutely perfectly okay. Not only that he's hounding her,
right,
trying to get her, but the whole town is behind it. Like everyone's like, yeah, let's do this, man.
I think, and again, this is before even our time, maybe a deep hole for our parents, or in the sense of like the Singing in the Rain, which is one of my wife's favorite movies.
Yeah.
And I think there's about from main character to young Debbie Reynolds, there's like a 30 or 35 year age difference.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's no big deal.
Right, right. Back then, apparently not.
It's like, hey, is that your daughter?
Right, yeah.
It's just like, no, that's my girlfriend. And it was okay. Again, the old guy still kind of propped up. But these old guys, the thing is they looked old in a lot of cases, but they weren't necessarily old by our standards.
That's a good point. And I think there's a whole bunch of examples of us thinking that an actor was much older than they really were, because people back then, as God is my witness, maybe it was the makeup, maybe it was just the fact that everybody was doing what we said earlier, right? They're putting Crisco oil on their faces and burning
not using
themselves in the sun.
Yeah, but their lips look really good.
No skincare, no moisture. Yeah, that people just looked older. But I think back on shows like the Munsters. Right, the Munsters, Grandpa Munster, right? A show about a lovable Frankenstein character whose wife is a vampire and his kid is a werewolf, and the grandpa's a vampire, and they all live together in a house and try to mix and match with the regular folks. Grandpa Munster looked like he was about 85 years old. That actor, Al Lewis, was only about like 43 or 42 years old at the time, right? How about Mr. Roper? From Three's Company, of course. Right. Yeah. So I almost had a brain glitch there. He looked like he was 70? No, at least 65 to 70. Like that dude was 53 years old when he made that show. Right.
And I think that's part of it too, is it's also not the chronological age or how they look, but how they were written. Right. And then regard as, he's this old cranky, in the sense it's like, hey, I like to be a cranky old man when it suits me. But in that regard, is these characters were sort of, yes, the perception becomes reality in that circumstance, because it's like, again, they're older. They're older than the main characters. Ergo, they're angrier and they're crankier and they have a completely different perspective. Whereas now you can get, and I'll throw names out there like a Tom Cruise or a Keanu Reeves or even Brad Pitt, who are all like around 60. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so take them back to that time when they were 60 years old, it's like they certainly would not have, they would have looked a lot different, I guess.
Tom Cruise right now could have easily been cast as one of the high school students in Greece. He could have easily.
Maybe like a sophomore or junior even.
Did you ever see how old those dudes were?
Oh, it was terrible.
They were like 30 years old playing an 18-year-old.
Right. And we were supposed to, just go with it. Man, they're in high school. That's relatable. But that was all of them. I mean, that was the Mary Tyler Moore Show and everyone else. Like they were all young compared to, or I guess they were young. I don't know. They were young, but they weren't perceived as young.
No.
They weren't sold as young. They didn't act young. And I guess that's different now. It's like, they can be, hey, 50. If 50 is the new 40, does that mean that 60 is the new 50? I don't know. I guess there's some sort of correlation.
I don't know. Here's my correlation. I feel like Hollywood during the 70s, largely controlled by old white dudes.
Yes.
Shocking. Just survived the 60s, where it looked like young hippies were taking over the world. And I think the reaction to it was, we're going to hold on to the old character actors that we remember and just mold Hollywood into old white people. And again, maybe not necessarily the white thing. I mean, whatever, but we're going to somehow mold Hollywood into a bunch of old actors that we can relate to. As a kid, the people that I laughed at and thought were funny were way too old for me to even be caring about. I'm thinking of like Phyllis Diller or Joanne Worley or Ruth Buzzy. Why am I laughing at these women that are 40 or 50 years older than me as a kid? Why am I even having them as my models that I'm supposed to laugh at?
Well, I think, and that's the thing that was funny is, again, they were on game shows because they had already, I think, been sort of kicked to the curb in the sense, well, yeah, you can't be on a sitcom or you're not movie material, but you can be on Match Game with Gene Rayburn and his long ass skinny microphone, right? And all playing word association with these people. And again, we're watching, so it's like, I think maybe then we kind of realized it's like, okay, these people are kind of like my mom, or maybe like, our neighbor down the street, Doris, or our aunt or something like that. They have like these thick, raspy voices from smoking way too many cigarettes.
That's right.
Right, or drinking a little too much
and by the way,
gin.
Smoking the cigarettes during the Match Game is, no, maybe not. I don't know. But I have memories of people smoking cigarettes, obviously on air during talk shows and interviews. But certainly Match Game, one of the greatest. I'm watching it as a kid sitting at my house, and I'm 10, 11, 12 years old. You'd think I would have better things to do than sit and watch a game show that is all 50, 60-year-old people shooting the shit, drinking, smoking, just talking about all these not even, very thinly veiled sexual references. And it was just, totally okay. But why? why would I even give a shit about that? It's because that's all we had, right? There wasn't a lot of exposure to, I don't know, I felt like, kids my age being somehow represented on TV. I know there was obviously some.
Right. But you were exposed to this, and you were also exposed to, and again, when you watch these shows and these people that and I couldn't tell you who some of these, again, I guess Richard Dawson was on Hogan's Heroes.
That's right.
Right. And then he became a host on his own. So he really branched out, right? He went from contestant to host to a guy who was sexually harassed every female guest on his show from the entire time.
Oh, yeah. Perfectly okay to mouth kiss every single contestant on the game show. That's what he did, you guys. Richard Dawson, a character actor for years, was
became a bit.
A host of Family Feud.
Right.
Yes, that same Family Feud that you know today. And that was his thing. Every single female got mouth-to-mouth, lip-lock, lengthy kisses sometimes from Richard Dawson in front of a national audience. And that was just okay.
It was his thing.
Yeah. So going back a second to something we were talking about earlier, when I think back on some of the other cop shows, like Ironside, for instance, which is, for those of you that don't know, Ironside is another old guy, Raymond Burr.
Right.
Am I wrong? Yeah, Raymond Burr. And no, he gets shot, and now he's confined to a wheelchair. And but he's a detective, right? A homicide
chief of police,
detective.
I think.
Oh, chief of police.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
think,
okay, there you go. Well, that's even deeper pull. Nicely done.
Most guys would probably just retire at that point if they'd been shot in, line of duty, but not Ironside.
But we talk a lot about things being quote unquote woke these days. But I do feel like the 70s, whether it wanted to or not, whether it tried to or not, there were some shows that seemed to be making an attempt at diversity, including a gentleman who is in a wheelchair.
Right.
Of course, not the greatest plot premise.
Not then.
Pretty easy to get away from Ironside.
Right. Run down a couple flights of stairs, and I think Ironside's screwed. Didn't see a lot of chases.
No, you didn't see a lot of chases.
He didn't chase anybody down an alley.
That's right.
Or and climb a chain link fence.
And because the folks who are disabled or challenged, we didn't have a lot of ramps or accommodations for folks that were in wheelchairs. So Ironside was really easy to elude back then if you were a criminal. Right. But you couldn't elude his brain or his intellect, could you, Chris?
No.
Of course, another one of my favorite cop shows back then, and with Peter Falk, the one I'm talking about.
Columbo.
Yes, Columbo. Another old guy.
Right.
He must have been 100 years old when he did that. No, he was probably 30.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I say what was the diversity issue there? What was the woke thing there? Well, he only had one eye.
Right.
He had a glass eye. Many people don't know that.
Right. And they called him the cockeyed cop.
Yeah.
Which is okay. And
wow.
It's nice. I don't think anyone wants to see that one in their performance review, you know, in that regard.
A number of one-eyed celebrity folks back then. Sammy Davis Jr., another famous one-eyed guy with a glass eye. Yeah.
Right. Sandy Duncan. I don't think she ever shot anybody or anything along those regards. But
Sandy Duncan had a
glass eye. There was even a band called Sandy Duncan's Eye. I would say,
wow.
Google does.
Wow.
Get the Google machine.
What was the deal with people losing their eyes back then?
I don't know.
Wow.
They're all generationally, they're all kind of the same.
Yeah.
So there must have been something. I think the rumor about Sammy Davis Jr. was that the mob cut his out or something like that because he was dating a white woman or something. I mean, that goes way back in. That's probably, that goes back to maybe a poodle in the microwave story. I don't know if that's true or anything in that regard. But yeah, glass eye. I guess maybe ophthalmology was not what it is now.
Well,
People lost a lot of eyes.
Well, I have to say that for it being 50 years ago, it was pretty undetectable for the most part that they had these glass eyes. That was pretty impressive. I mean, I don't know what's really involved. I mean, once the socket is empty, can you just stick anything in there? I don't know how hard it is, but I have to say that was pretty damn convincing, especially Sandy Duncan. I didn't know she had a...
Yeah. And I think... But I mean, it wasn't part of the show.
No.
It wasn't in the title.
No,
it wasn't like Columbo and his eye
That's right.
or anything like that. It wasn't Sandy Duncan's eye, which again, I think you could probably find them maybe on one of these same platforms, streaming platform, maybe. Again, wasn't in the title, wasn't out there like Jake and the Fat Man, which try to get that out now, and I'm not advocating
the
for
70s had no problem just calling a person what they were.
Just
That's right. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jake. Well, you must be the fat man, right? Because in the sense, and so it's just, and again, I'm not saying that needs to be the title, but probably you're going to reboot that one these days. Probably going to change the title of that. Maybe the cat man, he's got a bunch of cats around his house or something.
I just feel like, being called out for your weight back then, it just was not the same thing. I mean, I'm sure it hurt people's feelings no different than it does today, but I mean, it was almost like a badge. They had Fatty Arbuckle.
Right.
He's a famous
Chubby checker.
Chubby checker.
Right.
You've got Fats Domino.
Yes.
The famous singer. You've got Minnesota Fats.
Right.
Who's the famous
exactly
pool shark. For some reason, Fats and Fatty and Fatty Fat, it was just okay.
Yeah, but they also it was not only okay, it was also sort of and again, I think you had to have this, and luckily I think you or I, but I had no people who did. You would go into a department store and they would have, they would be close. And, well, hey, full disclosure, I think my brother fit in this category. He would have to go in the Husky section, right? Husky was in the sense that it was just like, well, you weren't really fat, but you were kind of big for your age, right? And so you wouldn't fit into these normal. There was stores, and I guess there were stores for women like that were literally like Eagleson's, where it was like, you wouldn't, your average built guy wouldn't go buy a suit there or a sport coat
right.
there. Their whole thing was literally like, and actually, hey, I think that's fine. I mean, if we want to talk about some people are going to be larger, of course, they should have access to the same things. But here's the thing. It was like, these were different brands. It was like your standard brand. It's like, that's what it needs to be. If you're selling Levi's or Nike or anything like that, you should have them in all sizes. People shouldn't have to go to a different store for some weird brand to have something that's not quite the same because you're bigger, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you're the fat man.
Now that I'm thinking about it, though, it seemed like once you become an adult, if you're overweight, it's okay to just say fat. But as a kid, for some reason, back in the 70s, we were sensitive. And at least from the advertising world in that perspective, it's right. Husky was the term for the kid that was a little bit portly, but really only boys. It didn't really refer to girls. Girls weren't husky. Only boys were husky.
No.
Yeah. And then of course that goes right back into our favorite clothes. That you can use if you're husky, which is the Toughskins.
Toughskins.
They had a husky version of Toughskins. And Toughskins, again, that kind of goes back to Levi's jeans. So Toughskins, kind of the same thing as Levi's. When you received them from the store, they were unwearable, right? They were the thickest material on the planet.
They would stand up in the corner by themselves.
These things could be tents for a MASH unit, right? These things were that thick, that thick a canvas. And only available in the most unimaginable colors.
Maroon,
right? Burgundy,
green,
burgundy. Just not even a regular dark green. This was more of a what would you even call
lime
it?
Green?
Lime green. I think tan was the closest they ever got to a normal color.
And they never got soft. Like your Levi's, there was a whole process to get your Levi's to where you could wear them and where you could fit into them and they would feel comfortable. And then you never wanted to take, it was like, these are my jeans and they're precious. And the Toughskins, because they never got soft.
No. And
then unfortunately, they never wore out. Right. So in the sense, it was just like, it's like, no matter what I do, I can't get holes in these things. Or maybe my mom would iron on, they have these iron on patches that sometimes moms would even say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to put the patch on the outside of the knees because that's a cool look. Right. And so they would never wear out. So you had to outgrow them. But if you had them 9 sizes too big, you would never outgrow them. So you could never get rid of them.
Yeah.
But it was that, and only available at Sears, which again, every kid wanted to go to Sears.
Now there was actually, just to make it even worse, good point, for a while there, they were selling matching Toughskin jackets that would match your pants. You looked like basically like a Russian mobster in a tracksuit, but it was made out of Toughskin material.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I remember also going, and again, you could only get them at Sears. If you went to Sears in those days, you were kind of screwed because you weren't getting any kind of brand other than Toughskins or something, or Sears brand. And I remember also getting shoes And I don't know if you did this. It's like I'd go buy a new pair of sneakers, and they weren't even actually like, I don't think it was till junior high where I got my first actually brand pair of sneakers, because I would wear them out, right? Because I can hear my dad now talking about why he didn't spend any more on sneakers. But we would go and we would buy a new pair of shoes, and I don't know if you did this, we would wear the new shoes home.
Yeah,
put your old shoes in the box.
Oh, that was my favorite.
And then it's like, I'm walking in my new shoes. And
that's right.
It makes, would anybody do that now? Would anybody think about, I'm just going to wear these out and put my old beat up or put my flip-flops in my box? Nobody does that. Chris, but it was just like, I got to get these things on my feet now.
You are exactly correct. There was no greater thrill as a kid back in the 70s for sure than looking at your mom. It was always your mom that was shopping for shoes with you. And saying, can I just stick the old shoes in this box? And I love how you took the old shoes home with you, as if there was later going to be some sort of a ceremony,
right,
or something, right? Or I guess the idea was you could still wear them.
If you were working in the yard or something.
Death to the old ones. And I will be carrying them out now in this little coffin. But I'm going to walk out of this store with new shoes, and to know that you only had just bought them seconds ago, and they're already on your feet, and you're still in the store.
You couldn't wait to get them on your feet.
Walking out of the store, you almost felt like you were stealing the shoes. That's what it felt like to me. It's like, check this out, everybody.
Yeah,
I've only owned them for 2 seconds. Guess who's walking out of the store wearing the shoes?
There should have been like theme music kind of pumping in the background.
Oh my God.
Ceremoniously walking out with your new shoes.
Greatest feeling ever.
Because you didn't buy a new pair of pants and wear those. Yeah. I'm just going to wear these pants. Put my old pants in the bag.
And showing up to school. Shoes. Showing up to school the next day with your new shoes, especially if they were, just perfectly pristine white.
But they wouldn't stay that way for long.
Yeah.
Right.
No, they would not. No, they wouldn't.
No.
All right. Well, there we go. Man, I think we squeezed a lot of super, super important stuff into this episode.
Until next time.
Until next time.